Hey, what's going on? Well, as for me, I was planning on playing Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. The game's a bit too expensive for me. Seems like it's about $99. And luckily for me, the game's even on sale for about 52 cents. And if I want to get the deluxe edition, it's 21. It's my lucky day. Fortunately, that's still a bit too steep for me. It's not going to stop me from playing Metal Gear. Luckily, I am sponsored by Steam Unlocked. All jokes aside though, I do have a workaround. Thought to myself, well, why don't I just remake Metal Gear Solid 3 in Red Dead Redemption 2? And if you are wondering, how am I supposed to even do that? Well, let me explain it. I want to make it clear that I'm not only just recreating the Metal Gear Solid 3 map, but also the gameplay and the stealth, and also the storyline, and it's all going to be playable in Red Dead Redemption 2. Luckily for me, I do know how to program mods, and I do have an extensive record of making mods. Luckily for me, Red Dead Redemption 2 has Script V. I can make mods basically the same way I used to make mods back in the day, which is pretty cool. With Script Hook, I can spawn in enemies and also objects. I can even teleport the character whenever I want, even to Tahiti, even before Chapter 7, which I think is pretty cool. I can even make a mod where Arthur can eat pig shit and his stats deteriorate. In other words, it means that I can just basically do whatever I want. So I'm gonna recreate the map. Yeah, the reason why I'm recreating the map first is it's gonna take the longest to make. I need to make sure that I get it out of the way first. Programming the main part of the mod, which is the gameplay and the stealth mechanics, probably would take maybe a day or two, 3. Making the map, however, would probably take me about a week. So I'm gonna probably start. I need to use a tool called Rampage, and with Rampage Trainer I can spawn in objects and I can also view their coordinates. I'm pretty sure you can fully recreate or make any map you want in Rampage, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to do that. In my script, I can basically unload different parts of the map whenever I want. Sorry, had to do something. I'm only going to be spawning in the props with my script. I can have full control over the map. Pretty cool. So I can unload it whenever I want. Just so that when you're done playing the game, the map is unloaded. And by the way, the reason I decided to make this in Red Dead Redemption 2 instead of GTA 5, well, I don't know, but in my opinion, I think that Red Dead Redemption 2 just kind of looks similar to Delta. It's a more superior game. I don't know, dude. But, back to making the map. First and foremost, I might as well just recreate the first area from Metal Gear Solid 3. So, I looked around for the most similar place. So, I think that Brandywine Drop is probably the most similar looking area. I think it looks pretty similar to the first area that you're in Metal Gear Solid 3. The area where he parachutes down into. And one thing about all the areas in Metal Gear Solid 3 is that they're kind of enclosed by these hills. So instead I end up finding this rock model, which I think looks similar enough. And after about an hour I end up making, honestly, a map that looks pretty similar to the original. Now this rock model that I'm using is going to be present in pretty much every single area, but I think it does the job. In addition to that, just because Metal Gear Solid 3 is all about, hunting, where, that's the thing that you could do in the game, I decided to add some campfires so that you can cook your food, or something like that. And if you want to disable it, I left an option for you to disable it. The campfires weren't in the original game, but I don't know, I think they're fine. I also decided to spawn in some animals within the map, just for the player to hunt. In Metal Gear Solid 3 you can hunt snakes and alligators, stuff like that. So, decided to spawn them in myself as well. I wrote a pretty short program that logs my character's coordinates to a text file on my desktop, and that way I can spawn the animals in pretty quickly. And I also added Snake's backpack on top of a tree, just like in the game. In the first objective you're going to go up the tree and climb it, and you're going to take the backpack, just like the game. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the first map done. And if you ask me, I think it looks pretty decent. Not too bad. Here's a quick comparison between Metal Gear and Red Dead Redemption 2, and yeah, I think it looks pretty similar. I don't know, let me know. And after that I was pretty much done with the first area, and I decided to work on all the other areas after that. And I ended up finishing all the areas without any problems until I ended up getting to the lab. And when I got to the lab, I ended up making the lab. The game ended up crashing, and so I decided to start experimenting, try to figure out what was causing the crash to happen, and after a while, I ended up coming to the conclusion that the game was just being overloaded with too many entities being spawned into the game. Turns out that Red Dead Redemption 2, or Rockstar Games for some reason decided to program a limit to how many props there can be in a single scene. Turns out it's around 350, give or take. Also, I think I sound pretty tired right now because it's 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning. And unfortunately, there's no solution to this problem, and there are some solutions for this for GTA 5. There are certain mods that disable the prop limit. There's nothing like that for RDR2, which is pretty unfortunate. So unfortunately, I literally have to force myself to not use as many objects in a single scene, meaning that certain maps or certain locations might just look a bit undetailed and empty. That sucks. And that was the first problem that I encountered within making this mod. Luckily, this problem did not stop me from making the mod. I ended up continuing, and I just avoided using as many props in future scenes. Oh yeah, and also whilst I'm talking to you, here are some comparisons of Metal Gear Solid 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2. My mod, more specifically, where you can see how it looks. And I think it looks pretty similar, you know? But yeah, moving on to the next part. Eventually I got to this one part where I had to remake this one scene where there's like a giant tunnel with a pretty long ladder in the middle of it. Damn. Are you okay, Arthur?
No!
Sadly, there's only a couple of objects, or ladder objects, available in Red Dead Redemption 2, and all of them are pretty short. It only takes like 10 seconds to climb each ladder. No, even less than 10 seconds, what I'm talking about. It takes like 5 seconds to climb, fortunately, and I end up looking around, seeing if maybe there's some sort of native functions in the Red Dead Redemption 2 code to maybe spawn in a long ladder, something like that. There isn't anything like that, fortunately. I also would end up trying to stack the ladders on top of each other to see if maybe the character would decide to climb from one ladder to the other with like a seamless transition, but no, the Rockstar Games developers didn't program something like that, so instead I had to find a workaround. And I did end up finding one where I just end up putting these ladders side by side, and you end up jumping from one to the other. It's a little bit different from the original game, but it's not too horrible. Oh yeah, and also here's another side by side comparison of how it looks. So you can see, it looks pretty nice. So what do you think of it? I think it's pretty cool. And after that part, the main character ends up ending up in the mountains, and for some reason it's sandstormy up there in the original game, so I end up triggering a sandstorm within the script. And I think it looks pretty nice. Also, I felt like mentioning that at this point, a lot of the areas are half the size that they were in the original game. Didn't really have much of a choice. As I mentioned before, there's a prop limit within Red Dead Redemption 2, which kind of limits how many props I can use in a single scene. Well, I already said that. So yeah, that's my excuse. I ended up finishing up the mountains. Once I was done with the mountains, I ended up starting to work on the underground tunnel, which unfortunately ended up being a victim of the prop limit. So, for the most part, it looks pretty similar to how it did in Metal Gear, up until I get to the very bottom of it, where it's just a giant empty room with pretty much nothing in it apart from the walls and the floor, and the ceiling too. And the boss fight is pretty horrible. Not in the original game. In my opinion, I liked him the most in the original game, but his boss room is like the worst in the mod.
Man, these wobbies so echo that you can hear the screams of your mom I just killed.
Damn it! Fun, ain't it, mister?
Hope no one's in the tunnel to hear me beating this homeless lady.
And then after the underground tunnel, you end up in the main base, which in my opinion was probably the biggest victim of the prop limit made by Rockstar Games. I managed to fit in the walls and the floor of the base, and also the doors, but I guess in the original game there's like these ammunition depots and these other buildings within the main base. Fortunately, I had to get rid of them. God damn it, I can't speak.
This video is sponsored by PBS Kids.
This map, just a giant empty room without a ceiling, which sucks because it looks pretty stupid to be sneaking? I don't know, dude. It just looks pretty weird when your character is sneaking a pretty empty area where you can just see everything. There's nothing to hide behind. But then after that you get into the inside of the base and I think it goes back to looking somewhat okay. And let me tell you, when I was making this map, it crashed on me 5 different times. I ended up finishing the Groznygrad base and the jail area and the torture room and stuff like that which I think look pretty decent as a matter of fact. And then I also finished the sewers where you kind of jump out of one part of the game. Oh, so yeah, that's right. I guess it's kind of spoiling something. Well, whatever. Who cares? And by the way, I also programmed a sequence where you get chased within the sewers. So there's like a cutscene that plays. It's pretty nice. It's pretty cool. Pretty good. And then after I finished that, I realized that there's nothing to do but finish the smaller areas from the game, which means that it wouldn't really take too much longer to make the map. All I had to do is make the Sorrows River, and then some other area. What area? I don't know. Hold on. I also had to make the final boss fight. It's like a bunch of white flowers, something like that. I don't know, dude. I'm gonna add some more flowers later on. And then finally, after making all those maps, I finally was finished. It's time to type in the coordinates one by one. I'm not even joking, I literally took a screenshot of every single object's coordinate, which is a lot of objects. I already mentioned that I went over the 350 prop limit before, so at least 350 props, right? Which, you know, implies 350 screenshots. So I wonder how many there would be in total. And, well, I ended up taking screenshots of Steam, and there's no screenshot counter that they never implemented any sort of screenshot counter, so I ended up opening up the folder where the screenshots are located. I ended up selecting them all, and turns out it was 3,382. It's pretty crazy. So now I began to type the coordinates manually into my script. Now, luckily for me, I did have some foresight that I'll be typing in a lot of coordinates. So I end up using a little bit of a developer trick that people like Rockstar Games end up using. The method that I'm talking about is anchoring. If you don't know what that is, it's that you parent every single other object in this scene to the parent's prop. And the reason why I end up using this technique so I can move objects diagonally much more easier. When you anchor an object, you end up using the parent's. Well, it's pretty hard to explain, so you know what? I'm gonna give up. Doing so also allows me to type in the coordinates much more quicker because it shortens down the coordinates. For example, maybe the x coordinate was 2,543, and now after anchoring, maybe it's something like 5 or -2 even. Basically just shortens down the coordinates. But yeah. So after a long time of typing numbers in, I was finally done, and I can move on to the very next part. Making the mod, which was making the stealth. By the way, it was pretty simple to program. The plan was to write just some code that checks if the player is crouching or not, and if the player is crouching, it would adjust the sight of every single enemy, which would, you know, basically determine how far enemies could see, and that's pretty much all I had to do. But fortunately, there's no native function to check if the player is crouching or not. Kind of strange. I'm pretty sure there was something like that for GTA 5, but nothing like that for Red Dead Redemption 2. Very strange. Although I did have a plan.
I have a goddamn.
I decided that I was going to look for other functions within the game files to see if I can use something else to determine whether the player's crouched or not. And luckily, I did. Luckily, I did find a native function that helped out quite a lot. The function basically checks how much noise the player is making, and if the player is crouched, he's making way less noise. So after an hour of programming, which surprisingly it only took an hour, I got the stealth fully programmed. I ended up being finished with programming that part of the mod, and then after that I ended up spending like a day or two programming simple cutscenes within the game, and yeah.
Granola Bar HD will return to talking about cutscenes in one moment.
Now after I was done working on the stealth, I decided I was going to work on recreating more or less maybe like 70% of the cutscenes from Metal Gear Solid 3. I decided to skip making the first cutscene because there's no such thing like a plane or a parachute in Red Dead Redemption 2, so unfortunately I had to skip that, but a lot of the other cutscenes are present throughout the mod, so I think it's so good. And then after about a day of making the cutscenes, I ended up being done. I ended up working on the objectives the next day after that, which by the way, there's like 50 different objectives programmed, excluding some sub-objectives, which in total would make it probably around 70, so that's kind of why it took another day. And then after that, the next day, I ended up working on every single one of the spawn points for every single one of the enemies, which also included getting their AI paths, so I can basically program the characters to go back and forth between different locations, stuff like that, so that you know, the enemies don't have to stand still. I also ended up trying to program a suppressed weapon, planning on checking if maybe the player is holding a particular weapon, but fortunately there's there wasn't any native function to check what weapon the player is holding, so fortunately I had to skip that part of the mod and give up on that. So that idea went out the window.
Hello friends, I came to inform you that Granola Bar HD found a way to check what weapon you are holding. So it's okay now. He's just so stupid lol. I love you.
I end up coming across some sort of problem. It wasn't necessarily with the mod, but with Red Dead Redemption 2 itself. In Red Dead Redemption, you need to go up to your horse if you want to pull out any of your weapons. Unfortunately, you cannot just select weapons in Red Dead Redemption 2. And in Metal Gear Solid 3, there's a bunch of different weapons that the main character ends up using. But I don't want to limit the player to just having a pistol on him. I want the player to be able to select what weapons, they use throughout the entire mission without them needing to stop the mission and, get on their horse. And apart from that, I also wouldn't want to spawn the horse. I think it would be pretty weird to have your horse, in the map. I need to drink some water too. God damn it. So instead, all I ended up doing is just attaching the horse to the player, which, looks pretty weird. A horse attached to the main character. What I end up doing is just making the horse invisible, and I end up disabling the horse's collision. And after that, I ended up attaching the horse to the player's root bone, or whatever the hell. Then all I had to do was move it up a little bit on the axis and rotate it 90 degrees on the z-axis of its rotation. This way the player is always facing the horse's side. In Red Dead Redemption 2, you need to be facing the side of the horse to pull out weapons or change your outfit, stuff like that. So, however, I did unfortunately have one small little problem with this. It's, the horse's reins were still visible, even though the horse itself wasn't, which is pretty weird. And there's no solution to this, but so, what I end up doing instead is I made it so that the horse goddamn. Which basically made it so that the horse disconnects from the player when he releases the weapon wheel button. So by doing this, the horse is only attached to the player only when the player is selecting a weapon. Yeah, so that's how I fixed it. That was pretty much my workaround. Then after that, I end up working on the boss fights. And by the way, if my voice sounds different every
couple of minutes, it's because I keep on recording the video at different points. My voice just keeps on changing, I don't know why.
And then after that, I end up working on the boss fights. And I continued to program the mod for probably another day. And after that point, I was pretty burnt out from working on the mod. I've been working on the mod for a couple of days now at this point, and I'm just getting pretty sick of it. I'm getting sick of both Red Dead Redemption 2 and Metal Gear. As a matter of fact, it's been around 13 days of literally doing nothing but programming and also typing in coordinates and creating a map. So it's been pretty tiring. And at this point, I'm kind of debating giving up. Now, unfortunately, if I give up now, I'll have to pay $90 to get Metal Gear because the sale went off, unfortunately, so the game is no longer 20 cents like it was previously. I even began debating mugging the homeless lady that lives down the street from me. Maybe she has the cash for Metal Gear Solid Delta, you know how it is with these grandmothers. Or maybe I should steal from the Sick Kids Foundation underground vault, where they keep all the sick kids. Yeah, sounds like it might be a good idea. The sale for Metal Gear Solid Delta is off, unfortunately, and it's back to its original price. If each child has $1 on them, maybe I'd be able to get enough money to get my hands on Delta. Whatever, it's not worth the risk. Well, either way, the mod at this point was practically done, just unfortunately was a little bit of a buggy mess. The beginning of the mod plays smoothly. I even ended up recreating the scene where you climb the tree to retrieve your bag, but the first time you meet enemies, fortunately things turn a little bit south. The first enemy you come across is functioning fine in my opinion, but the second one is kind of just ramming into a wall. You'd think that maybe I'd screw up something with pathing or the AI programming or something like that. No big deal if that's what happened, I could just fix it, I could just fix it if that happened, but fortunately that's not the case. It just seems that whenever I tell a certain character to move to a certain location through the script, there's like a 10% chance that for some reason they will just default to the Rockstar Games default AI path, which is pretty strange. Now, I was able to work around this by just moving the enemy spawn point coordinates and stuff like that, but some of the enemies are still kind of messed up, so unfortunately I can't really do too much. It just seems like, depending on the area that I spawn the main enemy in, they might just default to the Rockstar Games AI pathing, which you'd be surprised to hear isn't actually automatically generated. Rockstar Games actually manually programmed a lot of the AI for all of the areas within the wilderness, which is pretty impressive if you think about it. They also very specifically made the map itself. Like, if you go out of bounds in Red Dead Redemption 2, the map is pretty detailed even. But as soon as you go out of bounds in Red Dead Redemption 2, the AI completely screws up, and there's no more AI pathing. So if you try to open a chest or pick up a carcass when you're out of bounds, instead of going up to the carcass or the item you're interacting with first, you'll just end up teleporting to it instead. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Fun fact. But either way, I guess back to my conundrum. Apart from that, I think that the AI programmed throughout most of this mod works pretty decently, but it can still be pretty janky at certain times. I did manage to fix some of the AI paths, but some of them are just too much work. It's kind of complicated and it's all kind of hard to explain. Also, one of the major problems that the mod suffers from is that sometimes when the enemies spot you, they just will refuse to shoot no matter what, and sometimes they will, and I really don't know why. They will sometimes punch, but now most of the times they will just not shoot the main player. And the thing is, it used to work properly within my script, but I guess I screwed something up along the way. Probably whilst I was programming the boss battles and the cutscenes, probably screwed something up there, but whatever. And my code is 11,000 lines long, and there's just way too much stuff to go through, so I kind of gave up on trying to fix it at this point. By the way, I'm using the World War I German outfits mod for them. Somebody else made it. I thought I'd let you know. Oh yeah. And bugs like that are present throughout the whole entire mod. Since the mod was basically complete, since the mod's fully playable, just really buggy, I ended up deciding to stop working on the mod. For all this time, I just wanted this mod to be as perfect as it could be. But when you're a granola bar, your energy ends up being pretty limited, and your circulatory system is so complex and spirally. It takes 30 minutes for a single neuron to fire and for the signal to reach the brain, or something like that. I don't know science. It's pretty taxing for us. I'll have you know I haven't seen the sun in 13 days. But fear not, since the mod is basically complete, but just really buggy. I might actually just upload the mod right now. It's in a pretty buggy state, but it's still pretty functioning and you could play it from start to finish. As soon as I just, make some simple adjustments here and there, I think it'll be all good. But releasing a mod in a buggy state makes me look a professional. AAA companies do that too. And if you're wondering, how do you play this mod? Well, it's going to be available on my Patreon for 30. It's going to be on Nexus Mods eventually. I don't know when, but it's eventually going to be on Nexus Mods. I don't know when I'm going to upload it, but shortly. Shouldn't be too long. For now, however, here are some highlights of the mod. I hope you think highly of it. But before you go and watch it, I just wanted to let you know that I might be doing similar stuff in the future. Maybe more modding videos like this. I don't know. Probably related to Red Dead Redemption 2. I also have a Twitch, but I don't stream. I don't know. It's just there if you want to go check it out. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can check out my Discord server. There's nothing there, but you can end up messaging my Discord account from there if you want. It's kind of empty right now, but but most importantly, I need some more soldiers to roll on the block with me. But now, I'm gonna play some gameplay. I'm gonna play a shortened down version of the mod. It's a comparison side by side. I think it looks pretty similar. You can be the judge of it yourself. Enjoy.
Quit with that damn Mexican garbage. Darn. Why does this have to happen today of all days? This all you got? Yeah. Well done. You missed. God damn it! How did you fools survive this long?